Morning, guys. It's 3 o'clock in the morning. It's Monday. It's the 23rd of August, 2021. The zombie weaver, Roseland, California. What's going on? Times like this, people are usually waking up and going to work. They'll be heading out for their jobs. The 9 to 5 jobs, or the ones who are ending shifts and going back to bed, and the other ones are just waking up, ready for their day. A day of public education, or of private education, or online education. Depressing. Anyway. Memory lane. Okay, change the channel. Every once in a while I keep running into these people who like to fish and farm for information. They want to make sure that they're probably going to be scammed just right. Or they want to do it for fun and not realize that they're opening up memory lane. For whatever nefarious reason is, if it's for good or bad. The lane is open and here comes the memories. Somebody had to mention about a process. Somebody had to talk about a process concerning about the pieces of paper that some people actually would have called food stamps. We have different definitions these days what food stamps are as compared to what they were back in the 60s and 70s when they were introduced. And actually able to be, probably off the years when they were introduced. But still, from my own memory, they were introduced to me, so I'm going to use that basis. As a young kid, it was never known what a job was, what a paycheck was, or what food stamps were. Until I was introduced into the process, I still had no clue what the hell was going on. All I know, these pieces of paper are supposed to help get us some food. Didn't realize that going through a nondescript building in a valley would be able to be the start of the stigma. In order for a parent to feed their children, if the job wasn't enough, if they weren't stretching by enough, the food stamps were supposed to be a state aid of sorts to help alleviate that in order for the family to survive. And sometimes if the family couldn't survive enough on what they're getting, they were struggling for it. My mother had been in between jobs. Growing up as a kid, we'd live in an apartment, and we had to struggle for every day for food and stuff. Ma would be working her ass off left and right, and when she couldn't, we had to depend upon state aid. There was a time when I was in my coming up on the teens, such as between 5 and 12 or 13, in that time period. Short span it was, but not exactly. You're in a small area called North Hollywood, California. You knew of a few places that you could go to for food. I'm not talking about food giveaways. I'm talking about once you get your food stamps, you're able to go to places to spend. And we were able to use real money for them. We were lucky enough. Big places actually had that kind of option. There's a couple of them my family used to know. The stigma starts is when you're going to a nondescript building right by a busy highway, or actually by a busy street. You go through the elevator, you go upstairs, and there's the process right there. You hear the typing, you hear the phones, you hear the people talking left and right. The uncomfortable plastic chairs mold. You sit and squirm as a kid while you're watching your mother dig out old damn paperwork she came out of the books. And the older brother tried to keep his younger brother from freaking out so much. And then to get the name called of your mother or whoever took care of you. Basically, it's the mother's name. And you don't even realize it, but you look around and you see other mothers with their own kids as well. Squirming away and not liking the damn bureaucratic system. So you walk over to a cubicle, actually to a desk, and there's a person over there you don't even know. And they're asking you a whole hell of a lot of questions. Take you over to an interview cubicle, an enclosed class area, and then comes the fun part, the talking. And about half hour later, after you tell them your life story, you don't even know what the hell's going on as a kid now, did you? You're just listening to this your mother telling a life story to the other person who's smiling, laughing, taking notes down left and right, trying to get all the information necessary. And you're still feeling like, what the hell am I doing over here in the first place? And you know your mother's embarrassed as hell because you already see it. Paperwork's approved, and then this stranger becomes a worker and a representative that's going to be stuck in your life for how long you're going to be in the process. Now she's given the okay and approval. Gets worse. Now you have to drive to another portion of North Hollywood. Other areas that you thought you knew. And then you realize that there was a place out there that actually doled out the pieces of paper called food coupons, designated in numerals, 1s, 5s, 10s, and 20s. What? No chump change? No, it's in this nice, air-conditioned, almost less. No chairs to stand in. Long gated hallway you thought stretched forever. And at the end of this building there is a small hole with a grate on it. Actually bars. It keeps between you and the other occupants safe. Because who knows what's on the other side. And there's no way to get to them on your side except through a grate. Stand in long lines about an hour or so inside. Not outside, inside. We don't want other people outside to know about this place, did we? It was not mentioned to the public, was it? Not even when across the street. There could have been other places like, moving company. A moving company storage area. The area could have been close by to a couple of fast food places that you knew of. So they get in and out. You knew what In and Out was because you've been there a few times, weren't you? You're a Southern California native, and you're living in Sanford down the valley. Yeah, that was it. You know the places where it's In and Out, and you've been there a couple of times and had burgers. You know what the burgers were, you know what the smells were, you know what the neighborhood was like. It's like, oh wow. But looking at this building, you thought, ooh. But you had to realize this was state aid, and the state had long memories. So, you go to the person at the end. Please produce your ID. Thank you. Please sign the book. Thank you. There we go. Here's the paperwork. Do you agree to these terms? Yes, I do. Okay. Next. Your name, please. Please produce your ID. And that's all I heard. I hate to have that damn job during that time. This is a time before we actually got the cards with the magnetic strips on. This is the time of the paper. When you actually go to different stores at the beginning of the month, here they are. Between the 1st and the 5th, here they are. The clerks had to steal themselves. There had to be enough clerks at the registers for this. At the different stores that you lived by. The ones who actually knew that you actually had food stamps. Going to the smaller convenience stores, because they dealt with food products. I'm not talking about like hamburgers and hot dogs that you see cooking like 7-Elevens. No. We're talking about actually able to get milk and cereal and canned food. Those were covered by the food stamps themselves. So in order to get those, and once you got those, you just produced paperwork. The unfortunate part, the person had to be there to use them. The stigma about and the legality about the food stamp program, then and now, you still have to be the one using the card. Legally and technically. Back then, they were checking ID left and right. These days, I hadn't seen them do that in a hell of a long while. They could be borrowing someone else's card, and they don't even know the difference. They know that they're going to get paid by the state regardless. But back then, they were checking ID. They had to make sure that you were the one using them. So mostly, when the paperwork was being shelled out, it had to be the authorized users for it. My brother got old enough, he became an authorized user, or co-user for it. And we had a few stores that we used. And when we got in there, that's where the stigma happened. For those who were actually working, actually getting a paycheck, they felt they were the lucky and special ones. But when they saw the people coming in with the food stamps, we talked about the stigma cities. Now comparing that right now, in our day and age, for the last 20 or 30 years, we're lucky enough we can actually pull out a damn piece of plastic, or even 40 years, and slide it. Sometimes earlier on we had to show ID. These days, just slide the damn thing and no problem. Right? Plug in the pin. Sometimes you have the cashier, sometimes you have the food. But that's alright. Just slide the card through. Plug in the number. And then get your food processed. In and out. Easy. No problem. Magnetic strips. You gotta love these things. But back then when we had the pieces of paper, that was a different story altogether. And you missed all those fun times. You really missed those fun times. Except for the old farts who actually lived through those kind of times. And some of them were actually cursed at the people who actually used the food stamps for survival. You only did state aid only when you had no choice. And also when you're employed by the state for various reasons, such as, caregiving. My mother was in between regular jobs. And when she was a caregiver to my elderly grandmother before she passed away, the last several years of her life, and it was my grandmother's turn. My mother hadn't worked a long while. His specialty was bookkeeping and income taxes. Well, at the time it was bookkeeping and accounting. Same thing. She was smart with the books. Very smart. But taking care of elderly people and working a full-time job just didn't work. So you'd be working by the state, and the state would pay you with cash dollops. But they also paid you with food stamps as well. That's how it worked back then, back in the 70s. I know because I was watching it all as a kid. And seeing how my grandmother and my mother struggled like crazy with this stuff. It was embarrassing as hell using those damn things, especially when you had to go to the stores. Growing up as a kid, nearly preteens. Going to the supermarket and being torn apart not by the clerks, but by the people behind you. See, between the 1st and the 5th of the month, during those days, is when the clerks expect the surge from the people with the food stamps, because they got to get their food for the month. They just got it. Now they got to get the food. So it worked. So there'd be long lines. In the stores that I had been in as a kid, I had seen no designated lane for food stamps. Stores would not do that. That's why how many times the management was yelled and screamed at. And I had seen a few screamers. I didn't realize what the hell they were doing. All I realized is they were embarrassing the living crap out of me and my family and everybody else in there. When the total was made, you didn't know which particular person had it or not, but you feared, you shuddered. I saw it in the looks. The kid don't miss much. He reads body language. He starts to read body language. He starts to read the anger and the frustration and the stress levels in the people's eyes and faces. Especially when the mothers or whoever was using the food stamps pulled out the stuff. So usually the mothers got more embarrassed than the kids. More ashamed because it was a stigma. Of course, my brother had to be a smart ass to some of them. And the clerks had to get a step involved with it. The management had to get a step involved with a few customers here and there. Opening up another lane, getting them out of here because they didn't want to fight. Meanwhile, for the monthly allotment, okay, how much was that again? Okay, where's the pen? There's the fun one. Yes, yeah, okay. Okay. Here you go. This is what's involved. And then the clerk is looking at this damn stuff. Get the tabulations going. I don't know who felt worse. Ma filling out the damn things, or the clerk had to process everything else. And it wasn't processed, it was the food stamps. I was at the tail end when it came down for processing the food stamps when I got older as a teenager. Because they were phasing out the coupons and they were bringing in the cards. God. So, every month, we'd get the allotment. We'd go to the nondescript building. Every so often, 2, 3, 4 months, we'd go into the other nondescript building to start the whole damn process. Ah, Mrs. Shaw, how you doing today? Oh, fine. How's your family? Oh, we're doing fine. And how's Johnny and David doing? Oh, they're fine. How's the health? Oh, Johnny hasn't caught a cold yet, but, you know, he's still trying to stay away from it. How you been doing, Johnny? Fine. This is our care worker. This is our caseworker. Oh, I'm not going to be the caseworker. They're putting me to another case at this point over here. One thing I know about the county of Los Angeles is they like to show they like to change caseworkers from people to people, just to get a bit of a variety. And it kind of sucked because when you got used to and started to know the caseworkers by name and by face, it made it all worthwhile. You're still stuck in the same building, but they bounce you from worker to worker to worker to worker. Say hello to the county system back then and now. Got so bad that Dave and I started doing the runs ourselves in the damn building. Well, Ma's at the... Yeah, I remember David talking to one of them when we started off with this thing. Where's your mother? She's taking care of Grandma and Aunt May right now. They're not feeling too well. Grandma's in the hospital again. Aunt May's in another hospital. So Mom's bouncing from place place to place right now. So she's got me doing the paperwork. Oh, I'm sorry to hear that. Okay, let's get this paperwork processed. Okay. Is there anything else you need? Oh, that's about it. Okay. Take care, boys. In and out, no problem. It's embarrassing as hell to keep going to this place. And then have to keep going to another place to get the food stamps necessary. When they switched over to the cards, you still had to go into places to program them and get the PIN numbers going. And we were able finally to swipe to your small and show ID when you started out the program. David had his name on one. Not very proud. We'd go to our favorite store. We see the printers of people. We had several stores we went to for it. But we still were able to use it. I can't say they were glorious times. But now it gets worse.